They don't like them.
Hey, I'm Greg Gutfeld with Jedediah Bila, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and she looks up to Tom Thumb. Dana Perino, the 5. Well, what do you know? A Fox News alert. We're awaiting the possible sentencing of Paul Manafort. The latest is coming up. But first, so while you're hard at work, what are the Dems up to? Arguing over whether they should condemn anti-Semitism. What a strange place to be, debating how to condemn hate. Yet for weeks, they've been dancing around Ilhan Omar's repeated anti-Semitism. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, miscast as the adult in this comedy, pushed a resolution condemning the slurs. But bowing to the hard-left newbies, she's dancing again.
It is one resolution addressing these forms of hatred, not mentioning her name because it's not about her. I do not believe that she understood the full weight of the words. I feel confident that her words were not based on any anti-Semitic attitude, but that she didn't have a full appreciation of how they landed on other people, where these words have a history and a cultural impact that may have been unknown to her.
Oh, so she's just ignorant. So now they're revamping the whole thing, not mentioning Omar by name, but including all persecuted people. This is how far the Democrats have fallen. They can't even agree to remind people that they don't hate the Jews. Seems pretty easy to me. But here's my favorite argument against the resolution, that condemning hate puts the hater in harm's way. Kamala Harris says, I'm concerned that the spotlight being put on Congressman Omar may put her at risk. Sorry, Senator, the spotlight is what Omar craves. The spotlight is the whole point. Besides, when the Smollett hoax took off, did anyone worry about putting Trump supporters in danger? When people said red hats were racist, did anyone care that it put targets on innocent heads? Did anyone care at all when actual harm was done? These are trick questions because the answer is obviously no. So a radical leftist dog whistles away about Jews, and the fear is that criticism of anti-Semitism might put her in harm's way. There are roughly 100,000 Holocaust survivors still living who managed to escape the Nazis. I wonder how they feel about that. So, Jesse, I guess it's weird now that if they're worried that if you criticize anti-Semitism, somebody else could get hurt from, I guess, enraged Jews. So now we have to worry about Jews assaulting her. Right. Is that the case? I don't understand this.
Listen, you're able to criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Omar apparently is unable or unwilling to do that because she's been warned a few times. But this is really all about Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi has gotten off to such a bad start as Speaker. She came in, the stock market goes down, they shut down the government, the Green New Deal's been a disaster, they've suffered nationally from a blackface controversy, and now they're suffering through an anti-Semitic controversy. The bottom line is this: Nancy Pelosi does not want to alienate these radical freshmen because she fears them, because they have so much juice. They have the grassroots, they have the youth, they have the social media, and these people don't want to take a loss. They believe they're infallible, and they're self-righteous, and they don't want to play defense. They want to go on full-throated offense against this president, and they don't want any blue dog Dems crossing over to the other side. So Nancy Pelosi has lost control, and that's why they're watering this down. It's like John Boehner and the Tea Party couldn't handle him, and he had a huge headache to deal with, and that's what you're seeing right here.
So they got the juice, which allows them to bash the Jews.
Very good.
Dana, this resolution doesn't name Omar by name, so but instead they're every persecuted group.
No, it's all hate matters.
All hate matters. I mean, so now we have to come out and say, okay, hate's bad. Just hate's bad across the board.
Yeah, it's very clumsy. I think the Democrats are embarrassed by it. I think they probably wish they never would have gone down this road for this resolution because of what the fissures that it's exposed, and now because it's being considered pretty much a joke. Who doesn't? Yes, all hate matters, all lives matter. Like we all get that. This seems to me like it's a point of the Democratic Party where you have to kind of wonder also what the Catholic Church doesn't really have that much say, right, anymore, right, because of all of their problems institutionally and the credibility problems. Now you have American Jews who have typically voted for Democrats, right, really having to make this decision about, do we continue to support this party if they can't even say that anti-Semitism is bad. And I disagree with what Nancy Pelosi said there, that it's not about her, meaning Congresswoman Omar, because this initially started like 6 weeks ago when she first got sworn in. And if they would have nipped it in the bud then, they wouldn't be having this problem now.
Mm-hmm. You know, can I just say something? Remember when Nancy came in and they said Nancy was going to cut off people's heads? They weren't even going to realize they were bleeding?
Yeah.
Now Nancy is bleeding. Mm-hmm. She hasn't been able to execute that.
You know, Jedediah, Omar is getting some very strong support from David Duke, who says that she's the most...
Does she condemn David Duke? Does she condemn David Duke?
I have no idea, but he claims that Omar is the most important member of Congress.
It's amazing that she doesn't take heat from that, though. You're right. You're right. She doesn't take heat for that somehow. If that had happened, you know, and it did happen, I think, to President Trump, and he took a lot of heat from that.
Peter Doocy should ask her.
It's so amazing, though. The dumb hurts. I mean, for Nancy Pelosi to come out and say, oh, it's not about, you know, Omar. Of course it is. And it would benefit you to say that it is about her, because now people are asking, well, who is it about? Is it about all of you, that you all felt that you needed to come out and make this vague, odd commentary about this, when in fact all of the language in it, if you look, points exactly to the comments that Omar made. You're talking about dual allegiance. So, and it also shows a refusal on their part when someone of their own rank does something outrageous, like makes an anti-Semitic comment, they're refusing to hold that person accountable. All the people in the middle of the country, it may make the base happy, the AOC lovers, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, but there's a whole bunch of people in the center of the country that look at this and say, why did the Democratic Party feel the need to do this? Are people confused? Do they think the Democratic Party is representative of hate? And it's a huge problem. So I think they better get there. Nancy Pelosi better get them in line. She's been there a long time. She's afraid of the newbies, and it shows.
Hey, Juan, as you can see, I should look this way. The voting is starting, even though I'm actually looking at Dana. The voting, look at the voting over there, Juan. Juan, why the obsession with Israel among the young people coming in here? Is this something that comes from academia? I want to understand it. Is it because they don't understand the language that they're using?
Yeah, I think in her case, she's unfamiliar with some of these anti-Semitic tropes. But to me, this is not the issue. I think they want to have honest conversations about American policy in the Middle East. And what they're running into is people saying, oh, you know what? She used these anti-Semitic tropes, and therefore we can ignore the larger topic. And I think when you have people like Ilhan Omar coming into the Congress, you know, we have the first 2 Muslim women, and suddenly their perspective on Palestinian human rights is introduced. People say, oh, wait, we haven't heard this before. That's no, let me finish.
No,
hang on.
I'm going to ask you, what is the larger topic?
The
That's what I'm
larger
asking.
topic, I already said, is U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and with regard to Israel. So you get Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, saying, don't equate anti-Semitism with legitimate criticism of the Netanyahu government in Israel. Elizabeth Warren, branding Israel the equivalent of anti-Semitism, criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism, is chilling in an American democracy. And here's J Street, a Jewish lobbying group. The biggest threat to the Jewish community is white nationalism on the right that Trump has unleashed both in the U.S. and globally. But what you get from Republicans is delight in this problem for Democrats, rather than saying, you know, when Trump says to a group of Jewish businessmen, oh, yeah, you want to buy your politicians and control them, or when Kevin McCarthy goes after Soros, Steyer, and Bloomberg as buying elections, we don't hear anything from the Republicans.
No, but Democrats expect Trump. Every time Trump says something they don't like, they expect Republicans to hold Trump accountable, the American people to hold Trump accountable. Now you have a woman who, whether she meant to talk about Israeli policy or not, her comments, it's all about the Benjamins. This is stuff that has been universally condemned. They now suddenly have a problem putting her in a resolution.
No,
so they're saying, oh, you should condemn your side.
They're
but when
condemning,
somebody
excuse me, Jedediah, they're condemning anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred.
Until they hold her accountable, guess what?
Nope,
she's being empowered. She's going to do this again and again.
If they are condemning hatred, why are Republicans having such trouble? Because Republicans aren't interested in condemning hatred. They're interested in condemning Democrats and Omar.
How are Republicans having trouble?
Well, they're saying, oh, no, don't do this. You got to really go after Omar. Wait a minute. That's why you see leading Democrats saying, Is this about silencing legitimate criticism of Israel and absolutely smearing, which is what we saw in West Virginia with that poster?
No, you're deflecting, Juan, to talk about Republicans when this is a Democrat issue. And you didn't answer Greg's question. Greg specifically asked about U.S. foreign policy. Why is there an obsession with Israel? And you didn't answer. And
I said it. It's about Israel.
Okay, but why
you don't
is it
say
about
why.
Israel? Why is it about Israel? Why? Because they are the only. Hold on, let me finish. They're the only democratic country in that region. They're our tightest ally. Their human rights record is so above and beyond Iran, Saudi Arabia. But I don't hear criticism of those countries. You only see criticism of Israel.
Are you kidding me? You think
has Omar spoken out about Iranian human rights abuses, Saudi human rights abuses?
Look,
I haven't heard her.
I'm thinking America speaks out about these issues all the time because their human rights record is so horrific. But you're absolutely ignoring Israel's record in terms of occupying West Bank territories, their treatment of Palestinians, and questions about a two-state solution, which had been American foreign policy.
I'm not ignoring it. I'm just not calling Israel evil. That's the only difference, Juan.
Okay, what a beginning. The House is voting on the anti-hate bill right now. Much more on that coming up. Plus, we're also monitoring Paul Manafort's sentencing. Those breaking developments ahead on The Five.
This is a Fox News alert. We're awaiting Paul Manafort's sentencing in Alexandria, Virginia. Doug McElway is standing by outside the U.S. District Court with the latest. Doug, I hope it's not too cold out there. You've been waiting out there all afternoon.
Yeah, it's pretty chilly, getting chillier as the sun goes down, Dana. We're in a brief recess in the sentencing hearing right now as the judge considers restitution. As you know, that Paul Manafort will have to pay restitution for the taxes that he didn't pay and for the bank fraud that he committed. They're trying to work out a deal between the two sides and differing numbers that they have about how much restitution he will have to pay. The sentencing hearing was late getting underway in the first place. It was supposed to start at 3:30. It didn't get underway until 4 because the judge was attending a naturalization ceremony. And then he returned. He apologized to the court for the delay and then reminded the court that Paul Manafort is not here because of Russia collusion. Make what you will of that. Also, another issue which suggests that this is going to take longer than we initially expected. Recall that this jury here in Virginia was hung on 10 counts primarily related to bank fraud. Judge Ellis indicated that he is confused about that hung jury because those 10 counts are primarily what Paul Manafort pleaded guilty to in the second trial in the District of Columbia, for which sentencing will be held Wednesday, just a week from today. Basically, it's an indication that Paul Manafort is pleading guilty in the Virginia, in the District of Columbia for charges which he was basically acquitted here in the district. Can you have it both ways? That's what the judge is trying to figure out right now, and it suggests a great deal of complexity because of these two trials and two outcomes. And we're keeping our eyes on it. Could go well late into the night. We don't know that, but there's a good chance, according to some court observers that we've spoken to, Dana.
All right, Doug. All right, stay warm out there. We appreciate it. And we'll come back to you for any updates, of course. Doug, in the meantime, speculation is mounting that Robert Mueller's report could be completed soon. But if the special counsel doesn't produce anything damaging about President Trump, House Democrats appear poised to pick up where Mueller leaves off. Nancy Pelosi defending her colleague's sweeping new investigation of people and organizations, all 81 in total, tied to the president.
This is our constitutional responsibility to have oversight over the executive branch. And the evidence that they will have is what they will gather doing the oversight, bringing truth to the American people. I salute the committee for the action that they have taken.
And while Pelosi and other top Democrats are hesitant to mention the I word, freshman Congresswoman Rahida Tlaib is doubling down on her calls to remove President Trump from office.
I will be joining folks and advocates across the country to file the impeachment oh my God, what are they? Resolution. I'm sorry. I'm not in the Michigan legislature. Impeachment resolution to start the impeachment proceedings.
Jesse, I think there are three types of Democrats when it comes to impeachment. What do you think those are?
Is this a quiz? No, you just told me. They're the ones that just won, and they are in swing districts that Trump won last time, and they don't want to do it. And then there's the old school people like Nadler that don't have competitive races that are, chomping at the bit. And then there are the presidential candidates that just, they don't want to talk about it, but they want other people to talk about it. Did I get that right?
Well done. I'm very pleased.
You get an A.
You get an A. You get an A. You have anything else to say about this?
I do have a lot to say about this, Dana. If they come back, Mueller, with no collusion. Think about this. Unlimited resources, 17 angry Democrat prosecutors, thousands and thousands of pages, sworn testimony, and they come back with no collusion. Remember what was said. Trump is a Russian asset. Trump is a plant. Trump's being blackmailed. Trump is a traitor. And that he was being blackmailed into conspiring to hack the Democrats. Now, how many times on tape have we heard the word collusion in the last 2 years? How many times have we heard on television someone say on another channel, this is now officially the end of the Trump presidency? And they come back with no collusion. How can the media and all the Democrats, with a straight face and a clear conscience, say, you know what? I'm going to pivot now, and there's no collusion, and we're going to get him on taxes from something in the 80s.
Or
how can they do that? All of the things he said about fake news being the enemy of the people is right. He is totally vindicated. The witch hunt is totally vindicated. And now you're going to have Democrats say, oh, you know what? Mueller didn't do a good enough job.
That's the thing, is that they've been wanting to protect Mueller from Trump, but then if Mueller doesn't produce what they want, will they hate Mueller?
They will.
I hate him now.
I think that's why they have all these other investigations going. I mean, you have the taxes, you got Grades, you still got Stormy. I feel bad for CNN and MSNBC because Russian collusion has been the IV that has been right in their arms. They have been shooting that junk into their veins. And once that stuff runs out, they're going to have to find another drug, hence all these other investigations. Because what are they going to do? And what about their viewers? I feel bad for CNN's viewers who've been led down that one guy
in the airport.
At the airport. Yeah, it's all these people at the airport who've been led down this path by Brian Stelter. And they're going to go, Brian Stelter, our hairless hall monitor, you lied to us. You lied to us. And he's go, no. Trump's grades. And he's going to have to chase them.
It is hard to imagine, Juan, that if Mueller does come, we don't know what he's going to say. Look, it could say, I don't know. But let's say if it doesn't come back with Russian collusion, it is hard to imagine that people that work on Capitol Hill are going to then continue the investigation and find something that Robert Mueller didn't in 17 months.
Well, I think the key point here is that Robert Mueller, with all the indictments, including the Manafort thing, and the conclusion of U.S. intelligence agencies, Russia interfered in the 2016 election. We know that for a fact. And what Mueller's mandate was, look and see whether or not there was a relationship between the Trump campaign and the Russian interference and anything else, all of the criminal matters. That's why we're talking about Manafort and the financial crimes that he committed today. By the way, I'm very interested in knowing how Virginia and D.C. handle the sentencing, in the sense that will it run concurrently or will it be separate sentences for a man his age? This is essentially a life sentence, potentially. They're talking about 19 to 24, a max of 80 years, but nobody really sees that. But with regard to the Mueller report, I think that at this point what we've seen is that so many convictions, indictments, and people are saying, you know what? Boy, that Trump, he surrounds himself with the best people.
Well,
Paul
I think
Manafort,
to talk, Jedediah, I'll throw you a question about Manafort, but you can talk about the Mueller report if you want. But I feel like if you care about the average American who tries to play by the rules, pay their taxes, do the right thing, I think you have a lot of sympathy for somebody like Paul Manafort, no matter how he was caught.
I think universally people look at that and say, it doesn't have anything to do with Trump, why he was there, but nobody's going to look at that and sympathize with him, universally, I think, left or right. With respect to Mueller, though, don't you think, I have to ask you this, Juan, because you see some rational Democrats, and then you see Democrats out there talking about starting impeachment proceedings before they've even seen the Mueller report. To me, a sensible Democrat would look at that. Nancy Pelosi has to look at that and say, hold on a minute. Impeachment for what? We don't even know yet. Let it play out. We've been defending for a very long time the right to see what he has to say. If Mueller comes back and has something, fine, then you proceed. If he doesn't, shouldn't that put a little bit of a halt in the process?
No, I don't think it's a halt in the process, but I mean, earlier, Jesse was responding to Dana. Dana had educated him about someone like Jerry Nadler, who, sort of an old titan of the Democratic Party and the head of the committee. And you see Nadler saying, you know what, we want to gather facts, but already we know about obstruction of justice, and he considers that an impeachable offense. So if you're talking about that, he's saying there is. But I really love your point, Jedediah, which is Congress is an independent agency, an equal agency, and they have a right to gather facts. And yet earlier in the week, Republicans were screaming why they got all these subpoenas.
They do, but 81
we've got to run.
is
I didn't have to
stretch.
educate Jesse. We were just talking about my Tucker hit. He knows his stuff. All right, Democrats are battling the Trump administration over the situation at our southern border. The latest in the back and forth. Up next.
Democrats in the media are ignoring new facts showing a surge of illegal immigration at the border. They're instead trying to use emotion to attack the president. Just take a look at what happened during yesterday's House hearing with DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen.
You said that you waited to give direction on how to implement the zero-tolerance policy because you wanted to do it with compassion. Do you know how outrageous that sounds? You wanted to separate children and families, and you wanted to do it with compassion. So in the meantime, you didn't do anything at all, and you let kids be separated without tracking them. Do you know how outrageous that is, Madam Secretary? You have no feeling, no compassion, no empathy here.
And check out MSNBC's Mika Brzezinski piling on Nielsen with this outrageous attack.
Kirstjen Nielsen, I remember her press conference when she defended this policy as a deterrent. And now with her testimony yesterday, she's, I don't know any other way to say it, she's become the face of the Trump administration's abuse of children at the border. At Wednesday's hearings, she acted like a hapless, hostile, helpless robot.
All right, Jed, here's how I see it. The Democrats could fix the problem at the border. There's many things they could do to join with Republicans to make sure that this crisis, humanitarian crisis, is handled. But they have not done anything at all, and instead they just demagogue it.
Yeah, well, they don't want to, because if they do something about it, they have to acknowledge that it's a crisis. They have to acknowledge that President Trump was right. They have to acknowledge that everything he was fighting for all that time was justified and that they were obstructing what was justified. I found that behavior abusive. I did in that hearing. Saying she has no empathy, she has no compassion, no feeling. This is a woman who has been front and center, arguing for border security because of the humanitarian crisis, talking about human trafficking that are paid for by drug cartels, talking about child trafficking and the importance of addressing these issues. So the fact that they flip it on her like that and make her out to be she's some cruel person in there trying to victimize children, that's not how it goes. That's not this woman has been fighting to fix this problem while Democrats have sat on the sidelines and obstructed this process for months and months and months.
Juan, what do you think?
Well, I think obviously that when you look at the reality, she comes across as lacking compassion, but also lacking facts. I mean, the Trump administration says 471 migrant parents have been removed without their kids. She says no, nobody has been removed. That's just wrong. When she says, oh, what cages? No cages. Benny Thompson, the chairman of the committee, says, but Madam Secretary, look at these cages, that you have set up for children that have been taken from their parents. Oh, well, she doesn't consider them cages. Wow. I mean, and she says with regard to zero tolerance, which they put in place, Jeff Sessions, then the Attorney General in April of last year, he says, well, we're going to impose this because we want policies that make it less attractive for the families. Remember, this is not an invasion, Jedediah. This is not an invasion. These are families seeking asylum. And
call it whatever you want. There's a record number of families
Right.
now crossing the border, and the Democrats have not tried to help solve it.
Of course they have tried, but how can they go on with a wall?
Okay,
this is not a wall. It's not going to stop
that. The headline out of the hearing to me was when she said she can no longer assure the American people who is coming into our country. Nobody ran with that headline. Then the focus from the media was on how she didn't know specific numbers off the top of her head. For randomly. And then they wanted to get her on a gotcha moment, and they asked, can you name the children who died in U.S. custody? And she knew their names immediately, but yet they don't run that clip. And I thought she was was as well prepared as she could, but the headline out of that should have been, the Secretary of Homeland Security says she cannot assure the United States taxpayer that she knows who's coming in the country. She needs help.
Yeah, that's not how you run a country.
From day one, we understood the logic of the incoming suffering. We saw it as a crisis consistently from beginning to end. The Democrats yelled crisis, then no crisis, then crisis. So the crisis only works for them when they can use it to target an adversary, which is what they did yesterday. We knew that sanctuary cities, we've talked about this for years, and free services is waving a green flag, lowers the barrier of entry for people to come here who are ignorant, women who are naive to what is about to happen to them, which happens to be rape, and the children that are being used as props. This is what happened. We knew it. We have been consistent when the caravan came. We saw the crisis. We talked about the rape. We talked about the death. But when the spectacle was no longer useful to the Democrats, we still brought it up, and we were mocked for it. So save your outrage, Mika, over breaking up families.
All right, and just a quick update. The House now does have enough votes to pass that anti-hate resolution, all right? Coming up, mind-blowing documentary everybody's talking about. Up next, we're going to react to Abducted in Plain Sight.
It's one of the documentaries everyone's buzzing about, Abducted in Plain Sight. It tells the twisted tale of how a sexual predator was able to kidnap the same child twice.
He had such an effervescent, wonderful personality. We became very good friends, and he was in business, and we talked about business matters, and it just sort of clicked.
Everybody had a best friend. You know, between the Brobergs and the Berchtold family, there was a best friend for everyone. We had some of our best family times when we were with the Berchtold family.
Jan Broberg and Robert Berchtold had an unnatural relationship. Berchtold targeted Jan, and he targeted the parents. He knew that he had to destroy Marianne and Bob Broberg to get to Jan. And they fell right into a trap. It's like a mouse going into a trap. They never even saw it coming. Never.
Unbelievable. The parents facing a lot of scrutiny for failing to protect their daughter. But as you watch this mind-blowing film, you learn that they, too, became physically involved with the kidnapper. Jan Broberg tried to explain the trust their family had in this man who abused and kidnapped her. Take a listen to what she told Greg Gutfeld on his podcast.
We are hoping that the end result is that people will put themselves in the shoes of, who is my best friend? Mm-hmm. Who is the person I trust most at church? The missing conversation for most of the upset that people are having is they do not understand grooming. He moved into my neighborhood when I was 9.
Right.
I was 12 when I woke up strapped to the bed of a motorhome moving down the road towards Mexico, and had a little tape recorder playing in my ear that over time I was completely brainwashed and manipulated by.
It's unbelievable. If you watch this documentary, you just keep going like, what? How is that possible? How can you do that? I mean, it's unbelievable. Anyway, Jedediah, let's just start at the top. The first kidnapping, and by the way, B, as this guy is called, had been convicted of child rape before.
They didn't know that, but
they
yes.
didn't. I'm just telling you, he had been convicted of child rape, and the Church of Latter-day Saints, had reprimanded him for being involved with a child. Now he shows up, and suddenly their 12-year-old is gone with him. They wait 5 days before telling anybody.
Yeah, and that's insane. And she's like, well, I didn't want to upset, Gail. I didn't want to disrupt it. Your kid is missing for 5 days. I would have been on the phone with everyone. Right. I feel an enormous amount of empathy for her. She was a 12-year-old kid. She was obviously being brainwashed. This guy's in the house. You're thinking of him as family. But these parents had so many red flags. I mean, look, I don't care who your best friend is. You're not letting your best friend come in, and because he's a furniture guy, he's going to build a wall in the bedroom to separate your two daughters because one needs more privacy. I mean, certain things that happen in this, you just wanted to jump through the TV and say, I mean, the mom is having an affair with him after he abducted the daughter. I mean, the stuff was so insane, and I do understand how someone could weave their way into your life and become a trusted friend or companion, but there were so many things. At one point, the guy B goes for therapy because he himself was abused, and he comes back and he goes, part of my therapy was that I'm supposed to spend time with your daughters, and they're like, all right, well, I'm not, if you have to. So parents need to be held accountable, but I do feel an incredible amount of empathy. So
let's just pick up on something Jedediah talked about, which again is one of those, oh my God, how is this going on? Is this a real story? As you're watching, the mother has an 8-month affair with the predator, and the father has a sexual experience with the predator. And then when they are asked to confirm that he kidnapped their child, the predator uses this to get them to say, no, 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 we gave consent.
Yeah, they were sexually blackmailed. And a lot of these instances, you see parents sharing at least some culpability when their daughter or their son is abused in this way. Even the Michael Jackson situation, parents were letting them go and sleep with Michael. Same thing. The father, this predator, was able to sleep with them. Also, the judge gave this guy only 1 year for raping a 6-year-old. And if you think about that, if he had actually served 15 to 20 as he should, a lot of this stuff wouldn't happen, and that's why you need Jessica's Law, because these people are sick. It also shows how malleable and impressionable these people are. It took her until age 16 to realize she had been brainwashed, that aliens were not going to then kill her father and kill her sister if she didn't get pregnant by this predator. And then lastly, this is such a brave and resilient woman. To come out of this as a whole person and write and share her story. I mean, just hats off to her. Unbelievable recovery.
By the way, you know, it's unbelievable, Dana, that the brother says that the predator was always a pervert. He knew
unbelievable.
this, right?
I'm going to yield my time to Greg because he did the interview. I would say that, remember, it's the 70s.
Right.
And I'm not saying none of this is right, but it was a different time. And I really do admire the family for being willing to do all these interviews and know that they're going to be judged by everybody in America that are watching them.
When you mean a different time, it was a time when they didn't even the term pedophilia hadn't been introduced to for public consumption. Even the FBI agent at the time didn't understand it. We talk about confirmation bias as a political thing. It's actually, this is the power of belief. The parents wanted to believe this guy was a good guy because he was so close. He was in part of their religion. And so when he said, you know, I'm going to take your daughter horseback riding, and then he disappears for days, he said, oh, nothing could go wrong. When you're biased toward a predator, you're like a plant that doesn't have an immune system for a parasite. And that's what he was. He groomed them, and he turned their immune system against them so that their parents, who are generally your immune system, were not present. They were not present. So the guy used to sneak in at night and through this door or the window with the separate walls. It was pretty crazy.
You know, I just want to underline something you said about the grooming. In both the Michael Jackson case and this case, you understand how these people insinuate themselves into the family to take advantage of the children. A warning to all of us.
That's right.
Up next, we're going to tell you why you should never ask, how are you?
How many times today have you asked someone this simple question, how are you? It turns out those 3 words are completely useless when it comes to making small talk. A new Harvard study finds to be more likable, you have to ask more meaningful questions. How you doing today, Greg? No, really, though. I mean, what do you think about this? Because I like how are you, because then if I don't like you, it's a good way for me to flee the scene. It's just like, oh, I'm fine, how are you? Great, bye, and then I run.
How are you exists on the belief that no one will actually be honest. Imagine if I did answer you. When you said, how are you? I would say my intestines are bubbling. I think I might have diarrhea.
You do.
There's a zit on my nose. And then there's another zit on my cheek. I have a weird cramp right to the left of my pelvis. I hope it's not a hernia. I keep going to the doctor, but when I go to the doctor, it's not there. And so they think I'm a malingerer trying to get drugs, but I'm not, although I wouldn't mind having some drugs. But the point is...
This is all real stuff.
This is all real stuff. And I've taken a lot of ZzzQuil lately. And sometimes I'm pretty groggy until 2 o'clock, but I don't care because the ZzzQuil's pretty awesome. So I'm fine.
Yeah, but the sad thing is you actually do that. When somebody says, how are you, that is what you hear.
That's so people stop saying it.
You're a special person. Dana, you know, they give some suggestions instead of how are you. Or you can say, how are you, and then have a follow-up, like, who's someone you relate to?
This
or
is so dumb.
what's your current state of mind? If somebody came up to me and said that, I would think they were insane.
Right. So, hi, how are you is all like one sentence. Hi, how are you? It's all one thing. So that's all like hello. So you can still say that. If you are trying to make, that's like if you're seeing somebody in the hallway. Hey, how are you? How are you? Okay, good. Okay, fine. Moving on. I agree, like, if you want to make small talk with somebody, of course you have to come up with something else. But if I'm at a party and someone comes up to me and says, what's your current state of mind? I'll be the first one to, like, find a way to get out of there.
Right. Flee the scene, of course.
I try to listen to these things, though, because years ago, my sister gave me advice that in every sentence, you can replace the word but with and. And it makes everything sound better, especially if you're in management. So I've tried to do that. But I read all of this, and I think it's...
I have a painful...
And I read all of this.
And I read all of this.
I have a painful and.
They say that a good tip is to share some news, some good conversational tip. Share some news about yourself, like, oh, I adopted a pet this weekend, or, you know, so it's hi,
That's
how
perfect.
are you?
I love talking about myself.
Do you do that, though?
No, I should. I should do it more.
You should do
Yeah,
it
I should
more.
just go out and just tell everybody what I'm doing and what I'm up to. I think they'd be even more sick of me then. I think, you know, I've had some really good days recently, and I've had some really bad days recently. But no matter how bad my day, if someone says, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "I'm great." Yes. And you know, it's all hell underneath. So I lie.
Yeah. Well, I think most people do, right? I mean, somebody says, "Hi, how are you?" You're not gonna do what Greg does, right? You're gonna say, "Oh,
yeah,
great."
don't do what Greg does.
So, well, I just say to them, that's too big a question. What's up? How
So you
feeling?
want more specific?
Well, if they
inquiry.
give me a specific, because let's give me some traction, something I could actually talk about. That's why you said, you know, if they bring up something in the news or something. But the remedy for this, according to the experts, is ACT. Be authentic, connect with people, and introduce a topic where you can share something. So, like you could say, hey, how the Nationals doing? And we can talk about Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
Great.
How about that Manafort sentencing?
Yeah, there you go.
So the key is to expand from how are you, but not to sound crazy. That's
Right,
the bottom
right.
line. All right, one more thing is coming up next.
All right, Juan, one more thing.
All right, Greg, you never know where you're going to find a hero, but how about on a school bus in Chesterfield, Missouri? Take a look at the school bus driver saving a child's life. That little boy, unable to breathe as he was choking, is Alan Lovegreen. Here's Alan.
I just couldn't breathe. I was scared.
Alan's brother Mitchell explains what was going on as the bus driver rushed to help.
He tried to make a noise, and then I asked, "Are you choking?" And then I kind of just shouted, "Tell the bus driver."
Now, Carolyn Goring is being celebrated as a hero, deservedly so, but she has a different explanation for why she did that heroic deed.
And that's, I'm thinking, these are my kids.
But the kids on the bus know it's more than that. What they saw was a true hero in action, saving a life. Way to go, Miss Goring.
Oh, indeed.
Dana?
Well, I don't have
Save any
animation.
kids' lives?
No, I have not. I want to introduce you to Tex. This is a longhorn bull from the I'm a Survivor donkey farm and animal sanctuary in Texas. So he likes to spend his time playing with one of these big yoga
Sad
balls.
story, very sad story.
Can you imagine what's going to happen?
Yes.
Watch this. Watch this.
Yep. Sad story. I guess you didn't watch my show on Saturday.
Do we have a little...
That's a barbed wire fence. That's a rubber ball. It's inflated. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, buddy.
They've already received 12 new yoga balls at the I'mASurvivorSanctuary.com. Lester sounds like a great guy, and Tex, what a bull.
Mm-hmm. All right, it's time for...
Robots are great. Robots are great. Robots are great.
All right, over at MIT, which stands for MIT, they've unveiled a new video of a robot dog that can do backflips. Check this out. And you're going to think, oh, this is really cool. Maybe they can join the Olympics. We could have a robot Olympics. But the fact is, if you attach some claws to it and some very sharp teeth, this thing is going to kill you. In 5 years, you're going to wake up. This thing's going to be on your chest like some weird android. What do you call those gargoyle creatures? And it's going to rip your throat out. And that's why...
Robots are great. Robots are great. Robots are great.
Jesse.
All right, congratulations to LeBron James, who passed Michael Jordan to be the NBA's fourth all-time scoring leader. There he is last night. He hung about 31 points on, who was that?
Did they win?
On the Nuggets.
No. Lakers are in trouble.
I know. They're in big trouble. And he got a little emotional after the game, I think, realizing he's fourth on the list, put a lot of hours at the gym. And look at these top five. Okay, so you have Kareem, you have Carl, Kobe. He'll pass Kobe probably maybe next season, and then Michael at fifth. And he's on pace, if he stays healthy, to be the #1 all-time scoring leader in the NBA.
Big story there, Jesse, is that he went to L.A., and they're not... Odds are they're not going to be in the playoffs.
No, they're going to miss the playoffs.
They shaped a team around him. It didn't work.
Try acting.
Yes.
That's what we did around you.
Yes. Oh, well, that hurts. Jedediah.
Yes, well, military homecomings are some of my favorite things, but this one in particular is amazing. When a guy comes home, this is Billy Red Heifer, and he had to share the time with his two babies, his human baby and his dog baby, and he had to compete. And you notice the baby, that's Savannah, the little girl, wants to get some love from her dad, and puppy Caroline was not having it. Plenty of dogs do this. Caroline pushed her way between Red Heifer and his 9-month-old, with his wife Shannon saying that Caroline must come first around him, and that if he doesn't show his love for her before anyone else, the pup will insist on not being ignored. Puppies will not be ignored.
It's a really hairy baby. Hairy baby.
Dogs do this. My dog does it all the time. If I don't pay attention to her, forget it.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, she needs the
undivided. What about your husband?
Oh, great. We have another person with dog stories.
Yes.
Okay. Will this ever end?
I think the dog beats your husband to you.
Well, you know.
All right, now set your DVRs, you know all that stuff. Special report up next with Brett Baer.